As Kahir's gaze landed on the four skeletons, his body trembled slightly. He could still feel their powerful auras. He took a deep breath and removed the four secret bones from his robe. The bones released a resplendent light, and a hissing noise filled the air. It wasn't a soft, gentle sound, though. It was loud and unpleasant to the ears. A halo of white light enveloped the bones, and then Kahir tossed them into position inside their respective skeletons. Immediately, the auras of the four skeletons began to fluctuate. Starting from the head down, the skeletons started to glow with runes. Their hollow eye sockets flickered with light, releasing killing intent. It was a sight that would have struck fear in the bravest of people. Seeing their bones jerk as they came back to life, Kahir was consumed with dread. "I have to get this right the first time, or else I'll be in big trouble," he mumbled under his breath. It took a matter of seconds for the four skeletons to come back to life. As they fixed their gazes on him, they flicked their rune tongues in the air, tasting his aura. Their sharp killing intent engulfed the space, causing the air to boil. Suddenly, they made their move. As they slithered across the ground, the sound of their bones rattling could be heard. When they were within striking distance, they lunged at Kahir. "Bring it on," he fumed. With a flick of his sleeve, he soared into the sky and appeared above the four snake skeletons like a divine being. At that moment, he was in full control of the heavenly hall. If he didn't have the upper hand, he wouldn't have dared deal with the four snake skeletons by himself, given his recent injuries and depleted energy reserves. Although he felt nervous, he was heartened by the fact he had the divine archive on him. In order to save time, he had decided to take them all on at once, even though it would have been safer to deal with them one by one. He discreetly formed a hand seal. Using the power of his mind, a silver lightning-type energy burst from his forehead, covering the sky and earth. The lightning cascaded down from the sky, wrapping around the heads of the four snake skeletons. In the Divine Archive, he had studied a section on how to defeat the four snake skeletons, focusing on their weakness. Although they had been born with a natural killing instinct, they had yet to be controlled by anyone. Without a master, they would be easy to suppress. Even though the skeleton puppets had been brought to life by the secret bones, a wisp of their original beast soul still resided in their minds. Their creator had fortified the puppets with his killing intent, making them stronger than their own physical bodies and turning them into killing machines. In order to control the snake puppets, one needed to imprint their soul mark onto them. Kahir knew that his master, Hector Augustus, had refined the four snake puppets. Therefore, he would have to use the soul mark method set out in the Divine Archive in order to gain control of them. Once he imprinted his soul mark onto the snake puppets, it would be very difficult for anyone to destroy them, unless they were top-notch experts and used their full strength. It was almost impossible to steal a puppet from another master. The soul marks hidden deep within the snake puppets were extremely profound and unique. Unless one was several times stronger than their creator, they would find it impossible to erase the original soul marks. As Kahir's eternal spirit power continued to surge out, it gathered together to form countless runes that poured into the foreheads of the four snake skeletons. Eventually, they started to calm down, and the look of murderous intent in their eyes faded away. Kahir's mouth broke into a wide grin. Although the process seemed to be working, he didn't dare be complacent. As he formed one hand seal after another, his eternal spirit power continued to penetrate the foreheads of the four skeletons. 2 hours later, he returned to the wild space from the heavenly hall. Although he was exhausted, he was happy. Now that he had imprinted his soul mark onto the snake puppets, they were far deadlier and harder to deal with than before. Kahir sat down on the ground and got into the lotus position. His mind started to race. He didn't know what the next day would bring. If someone tried to steal his secret bone and golden wings, he was determined to fight with all his might. He knew that if he received a serious injury, he wouldn't be able to avenge his sect, nor reunite with his family. "Father, are you still in the heavenly wastelands? Mother, do you often think of me and Father?" he whispered with tears in his eyes. "Talia, have you completely recovered?" After a while, he formed a different hand seal. His body became enveloped in a halo of golden light as he started to refine the energy of the dragon blood and spirit elixirs he had swallowed earlier. The first rays of dawn slashed through the curtain of night like a sword, welcoming the rising sun. Cahir had been inside the wild space for the equivalent of 5 days in the outside world. His cheeks had regained their rosy glow, and his breathing was slow and steady. The halo of light around his body was as bright as the sun. Behind his back was a golden bird that looked poised to soar into the sky, releasing a tyrannical pressure. As he absorbed the golden light surrounding him into his body, it looked like small snakes of energy were crawling over his skin. When the light was completely absorbed, he spat out a mouthful of impure air. He opened his eyes, and a powerful light surged within them, faintly rippling with lightning, star radiance, and purple flames. The wild space started to shake violently. When Cahir appeared outside the old courtyard on the mountainside, the sky was already bright. As he stretched his limbs, his bones cracked, releasing some of the tension within his body. His divine force was full to the brim with the golden aura, and the eternal spirit power in his inner temple was very strong, giving him a feeling of satisfaction. He took a deep breath and looked into the distance. Suddenly, his gaze moved downward. Just ahead of him was an elderly woman who seemed to be having some difficulty walking up the winding stone steps that led to the mountainside. As he focused his gaze, he realized that she was actually sweeping away the dead leaves on the stone steps. "She must be a battle servant of the golden-winged birds," he muttered. When he had entered the home of the golden-winged birds the previous day, he had seen many battle servants milling around, both young and old. They were usually assigned mundane tasks, such as sweeping the floors. However, when he sized up the elderly woman's energy, he became confused. No matter how hard he probed, he couldn't detect her aura. It was the first time he had encountered such a situation. "Unless she's a top-notch expert who can restrain her aura, she must just be an ordinary person and not a martial artist," he concluded. Cahir had always had confidence in his eternal spirit power. Using his powers of perception, he could even detect the aura of demon beasts at the martial domination stage. Therefore, he was shocked that he couldn't detect any energy coming from the elderly woman's body. "Perhaps there are normal people with no martial arts knowledge who serve the golden-winged bird race," he thought. "If she was a top-notch expert, she probably wouldn't have gotten up so early to sweep the road." He continued to watch her for some time, but eventually, curiosity got the better of him, and he landed gently beside her. The elderly woman had thick, lustrous hair and wore a pale golden robe. Her back remained bent as she vigorously swept the withered leaves on the stone steps. Sensing Cahir's presence, she raised her head slightly. Her face was full of deep wrinkles, suggesting she had experienced a life of hardship. She gave Cahir a kind smile, and he instantly warmed to her. "Let me help you sweep," he said, returning her smile. "Why don't you take a rest?" The elderly woman waved her hand dismissively. "No, I can't let you do that. You're a guest here." "Honestly, I don't mind. I'd like to help you. Besides, I'm not a guest of the golden-winged birds." Cahir laughed bitterly, and he took the strange-looking broom from her hand. As he swept the dead leaves from the stone steps, he motioned toward the wall. "You should rest for a while. Are you a servant here?" She raised her eyebrows. "Servant?" She paused before continuing. "Yes, I've served the golden-winged birds for many years." She straightened up, and an awkward smile appeared on her wrinkled face. After a while, she asked, "If you aren't a guest of the golden-winged birds, how did you manage to enter? I thought it was against the rules for normal people to come here." Cahir's gaze remained on the stone steps. "It's a long story. I'd rather not talk about it," he said with a helpless smile. "That's okay. I didn't mean to pry. It's been a long time since anybody's bothered to speak to me. Will you keep me company for a while longer?" she asked eagerly. "Of course," he said. He turned around and helped her up a few steps. "Why don't you tell me about yourself?" she said. He continued to sweep the dead leaves away. "My mother and father were separated when I was young, and I ended up growing up with my father, who's an alcoholic. As a child, I struggled to train in the martial arts. Even though I suffered many setbacks, my family never gave up on me, though." He had only wanted to make idle chit-chat with her, but in the end he told her his whole life story. She stood behind him, quietly listening to everything he had to say. After describing his upbringing, he told her about the secret bone he had obtained on the White Mountain. When he described the fight between the golden-winged bird and the terrifying beast on the White Mountain, which had resulted in him obtaining the secret bone of the golden-winged bird, her eyes lit up with excitement. Then he told her about his time inside the dark forest and his years at the Martial Academy and the ancient Sky Sect, where he had studied the golden-winged bird's supreme abilities. Hearing that he had obtained the golden wings of the great bird, her eyes blazed with golden light. "This is the will of the heavens." When he told her about the Holden family and how they had tried to kill him, her face contorted with rage. "Those people aren't human. They're monsters." She softened slightly as he explained how he had been willing to give his heart to save his sister's life. Between sobs, she said softly, "You poor child." She clenched her fists like an excitable child as he discussed his training methods and the genius contest in the Vicious Land. She couldn't believe that he had defeated all 10 geniuses one after another without suffering a single defeat. Finally, he told her about killing Prince Leroy in the Heavenly Wastelands and defeating Prince Harry and Prince Abel in the Beast Realm. "Those dragons were very arrogant, calling themselves the kings of the Beast Realm. But in reality, they aren't that strong. They deserved everything they got," she said. "I want to become a strong expert, reunite with my family, avenge my sect, and protect all the people I care about. I must admit, I'm worried about how the golden-winged birds will treat me," he admitted. By the time Kahir finished speaking, he had swept every single step leading up to the peak of the mountain. He sighed deeply and frowned. The sun was high in the sky. Its dazzling light enveloped the ancient land. He tilted his head to the sky, bathing in the sun's warmth, which gave him a certain charm. His hair blew gently around his face, and his robe rippled slightly in the wind. The elderly woman raised her gaze and looked at him kindly. "Don't worry, child. Everything will be fine." He turned his head and smiled. "I hope so." Then he handed the broom to her and smiled. "The sweeping is done." She laughed. "Thank you." There was a sadness and loneliness in her eyes. She bent down and dusted the dirt and leaves from Kahir's robe. "Look at you, you're filthy." "It's fine, my robe will clean," he said. Looking into the elderly woman's kind eyes, he couldn't help but feel a tinge of sadness. His grandparents had passed away when he was young, and he couldn't remember a single moment with them. If they had still been alive, they would have been a similar age to the elderly woman. "Silly boy, look at your shoulder. It's still covered in leaves. A good-looking man like you should always look presentable. Do you hear me?" Standing on her tiptoes, she picked a few leaves off his shoulder. He nodded seriously. "Yes, I'll pay more attention in the future." She looked deep into his eyes and sighed. "You remind me of my grandson. He'd have been about the same age as you if he was still alive. Unfortunately, he was very stubborn, with a rebellious streak. He thought he was talented and wanted to make a name for himself. But in the end, he got himself into trouble like you. If the golden-winged birds let me live, I'd like us to keep in touch. I'll think of a way to get you out of here so that you can return home and enjoy the rest of your life in peace," he said seriously. "You silly boy," the elderly woman said, shaking her head. Her eyes became wet with tears and her voice hoarse. She gently stroked his cheek as she said, "Okay, I'd like that very much." "Yes, as long as I don't die. I'll whisk you out of here and take care of you for the rest of your life," he said with a serious expression. She smiled her biggest smile yet. Up until that day, she hadn't smiled for decades. "Why do you keep talking about dying? Nothing is going to happen to you. You'll be just fine." Abruptly, she looked into the distance as though something had caught her attention. "Child, I have things to do, so I must be on my way now." Kahir took out many low-level pills from his pocket and handed them to the elderly woman. "These are for you. You don't need to take anything stronger as you don't train in the martial arts. These healing medicines will strengthen your body and boost your health." The pills were very effective and could be consumed by ordinary people. In truth, he didn't know how they had come to be in his possession. Next, he handed her a few spirit elixirs. "Take these too, just in case anything happens to me. When you eventually leave this place, you can sell them and enjoy the rest of your life in comfort." The elderly woman was stunned by his generosity. She gratefully received the spirit elixirs, and then they went their separate ways. A few seconds later, she turned around to take a final look at him. Her wrinkled face was wet with tears. "Foolish child," she whispered with a smile. Kahir turned around and watched the elderly woman descend the mountain. There's something very mysterious about her, he thought. Suddenly, 2 people flew up the side of the mountain. "Father, what are you doing here so early in the morning?" Star asked, appearing in front of him. Soon after, the purple phoenix gracefully descended from the sky. She had an otherworldly beauty and looked like she didn't belong in the mortal realm. Her purple eyes were mesmerizing. Kahir picked Star up and put on a fake smile, hiding his sadness. I thought I'd take an early morning stroll. Who were you just talking to? The purple phoenix asked. Kahir looked down the mountain, only to find that the elderly woman had disappeared. His eyebrows furrowed with confusion. An elderly servant, he replied. The purple phoenix didn't ask any further questions and looked up at the sky, bathing in the morning sun. The light outlined her curves. Kahir took a step toward her. If anything happens to me today, he hesitated, trying to find the right words. Take good care of Star. The purple phoenix remained silent, seemingly deep in thought. After a while, she turned toward him. My name's Serena. He raised his eyebrows. Serena, he said with a half smile. Before then, she had refused to tell him her name, but he had learned it anyway from Helena. Suddenly, the purple phoenix's head snapped up. Some of the golden-winged birds have arrived, she said with a frown. Kahir looked up to the sky. Many people wrapped in golden light appeared on the horizon. A few seconds later, 10 young men and women with extraordinary auras appeared in the sky above them. They stood tall and proud, and their eyes were suffused with a golden light. Their gazes swept across Kahir, Star, and the purple phoenix. Waves of domineering aura spread out from the young men and women. Their powerful energies distorted the surrounding space. Kahir carefully studied their auras. They aren't the same people whom Cressida brought along yesterday, he thought. The energies emanating from the young men and women above him were actually much stronger than the experts with Cressida the previous day. He sighed irritably. They are indeed worthy of the golden-winged bird bloodline, he thought. There weren't many demon beasts in the world with such a talent. Kahir's gaze landed on the young man at the front of the group, whose name was Jesse. Jesse was tall of stature with eyes that fluctuated with golden light. He wore a golden suit of armor, which made him look powerful and mighty. Kahir narrowed his eyes as he studied his aura. He's reached the enlightenment level of the Beast Sovereign stage, he concluded. Jesse's aura was barely detectable. The young man's aura swept across the space, powerful and overbearing. Suddenly, Kahir's followers, including Cassian, the Demon Kings, and Jackie, rushed out from the courtyard on the mountainside and landed beside Kahir, forming a protective barrier around him. They trembled slightly as they sized up the auras of the young men and women. Which human among you has the secret bone and the golden wings of the golden-winged bird? Step forward now, said the arrogant young man beside Jesse. His gaze swept across the surrounding martial arts experts before finally landing on Jackie. He doesn't have the aura of a demon beast, he concluded. His penetrating gaze made Jackie feel uncomfortable. Kahir gently put Star down and gave her shoulder a reassuring squeeze, signaling that he wouldn't act rashly. What will be, he muttered under his breath. He took a step forward and looked at the young experts of the golden-winged bird race. With a calm expression, he said softly, It was me. The young men and women fixed their gazes on Kahir. Their eyes were filled with a mixture of astonishment and curiosity. It's you, the arrogant young man asked with wide-eyed surprise. I heard that you helped our race yesterday. Because you did us a favor, I'll spare your life today. Now hand over the secret bone and the golden wings and get out of my sight. The Dream Tiger King, the Divine Ape King, the Fire Dragon King, the Silver-Blooded Leopard King, the Wild Bear King, and the others broke out in uproar, aggrieved by the lack of gratitude for all that they had done. Their eyes blazed with anger. Excuse me. Without our help, the golden-winged birds would have been toast against the dragons, the Dream Tiger snapped. You want Kahir to dig the secret bone out of his body, just like that? The golden-winged birds are ruthless. Talk about ungrateful, the Silver-Blooded Leopard King fumed. The previous day, Cressida had told them that she would protect them. They thought that it hadn't taken her long to go back on her word. Maintaining a calm and collected demeanor, Kahir asked, Is this the decision of the golden-winged bird elders, or is this just what you want? The young men and women in the sky inwardly recoiled and looked at one another for guidance. Jesse didn't say a word. The arrogant young man glared at Kahir, hatred pouring from his soul. After a few seconds, he said, Of course we're allowed to make a decision on such a small matter. Humans aren't qualified to touch the secret bones and wings of our race. Hand them over now, otherwise I'll dig them out myself. It suddenly dawned on Kahir that these golden-winged birds hadn't been sent by Cressida, but they were there to cause trouble. He took a deep breath, settling his nerves. Then he looked the arrogant young man square in the eyes and laughed. With your skill level and strength, you can't make decisions on behalf of the golden-winged bird race. Now get out of here. The young men and women looked at one another with confusion, wondering how he could laugh at such a time. The young man was equally as puzzled. What do you mean? He spat. Judging from Kahir's condescending tone and attitude, he gathered that he didn't fear them one bit. The corners of Kahir's mouth curled into a smile. Then a domineering chill surged out of his body. "Didn't you hear me? I told you all to scram." His voice was calm and resolute. The young men and women's mouths fell open with shock. The 6 demon kings and the yellow falcon were also surprised by his words. At first, they thought they had heard him incorrectly. No demon beast, let alone a human, had ever spoken to the members of the golden-winged bird race in such a disrespectful manner. Star was the only one who wasn't surprised by Kahir's words. She had gotten used to his no-nonsense attitude. The arrogant young man exploded with rage. "You have a death wish!" Golden light gushed from beneath his feet as he rushed toward Kahir. As he drew closer, Kahir's eyes flashed with golden light. With a flick of his fingers, a resplendent finger imprint shot into the air, inducing sharp gusts of wind. Seeing Kahir's finger imprint attack, the young man stopped dead in his tracks. Golden light wrapped around his hand, and then he grabbed the finger imprint in one swift move. He wanted to show Kahir that a small finger imprint attack wasn't enough to deter him, and that humans were no match for the golden-winged bird race. Suddenly, a bolt of violet lightning erupted from the finger imprint, destroying the halo of golden light around the young man's hand and scorching his palm. Sparks flew everywhere. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. The young man's expression darkened. He clenched his teeth, enduring the pain. As he had the bloodline of the golden-winged birds, he hadn't suffered too badly compared to what an ordinary person would have. "Rat, you're dead," he bellowed. A burst of golden light exploded from his good hand. Phoenix tattoos swept out and formed a golden arc around his palm. A monstrous aura suddenly surged out from his body, causing the air to vibrate violently. He had activated the Heaven's Wings attack of the golden-winged bird race. He had no intention of allowing Kahir to humiliate him again. However, before the young man's Heaven's Wings could reach Kahir, a shadow appeared before his eyes. With lightning speed, a similar-looking Heaven's Wings formation swept across his body. The young man fell out of the sky. He crashed into the mountain below with the force of a meteorite impact, causing it to split open and crack. He spat out a mouthful of golden blood. Unable to move, he seemed to be on the verge of death. In just a single move, Kahir had severely injured an expert who had recently stepped into the element level of the Beast Sovereign stage. Among the younger generation of the golden-winged bird race, he was ranked in the top 10. The young golden-winged birds were shocked beyond measure. The fact that a human had used one of their signature moves, the Heaven's Wings, against a member of their race was an abomination to them. The Divine Ape King, the Wild Bear King, the Dream Tiger King, Blaze, and Jackie weren't surprised by Kahir's show of strength. Even Prince Abel and Prince Harry, who were at the peak of the element level of the Beast Sovereign stage, hadn't been strong enough to contend against Kahir. Therefore, the arrogant young man, who had only just stepped into the element level of the Beast Sovereign stage, didn't stand a chance against him. Just then, golden light shot out of Jesse's eyes. As his aura surged, his golden armor rattled. Following his lead, the young men and women of the golden-winged bird race activated their auras, blocking Kahir's path. Without hesitation, Star, Cassian, the Dream Tiger King, the Divine Ape King, and the others activated their auras too. Suddenly, the atmosphere became tense and hostile. "You overestimate your capabilities. I'll spare your life this time, but next time I won't be so lenient," Jesse said. Kahir shrugged his shoulders dismissively and turned his gaze away from the injured young man at the bottom of the mountain. The young golden-winged birds looked surprised by what Jesse had said. Kahir had inflicted catastrophic injuries upon one of their members, yet for some reason, their leader wasn't willing to take action. The young man in armor looked Kahir square in the eyes. "Remember me. My name's Jesse. I'm sure we'll be seeing more of each other from now on." A cold aura exploded from his eyes, yet he didn't appear to be flustered in the slightest. Kahir's expression darkened. "Do you really think I'm scared of you? You didn't even do anything when I beat your lackey. You aren't much of a leader. If you aren't careful, you'll end up the same way as your friend over there." "If you provoke me, I'll make sure you die a painful death," Jesse said, as golden light erupted from his armor, shrouding his entire body. The golden-winged birds didn't allow anyone to provoke or disrespect them. "I have no intention of provoking you. I'm just speaking the truth," Kahir said calmly. "Right. You asked for this," Jesse said. With a wave of his hand, hundreds of runes rushed out, forming a claw imprint in mid-air as bright as the sun. His claw imprint distorted the space. In an instant, 5 black spatial cracks appeared in front of Kahir. As Jesse's claw imprint tore through the space, The surrounding demon beasts gasped in shock. They all felt a tremendous pressure around their bodies. The claw imprint carried the aura of the enlightenment level of the Beast Sovereign stage. Jesse had used his full strength to deal with Cahir. Cassian and the Divine Ape King weren't surprised that Jesse had unleashed a powerful attack. Since Cahir had crippled an expert at the element level of the Beast Sovereign stage in one move, it was understandable that Jesse wanted to tread carefully. "You won't get the better of me today," Cahir yelled. His fist became wrapped in golden light. Instead of retreating, he stood firm as a rock and blocked Jesse's claw imprint. As the two energies collided, a deep sonic boom shook the space. Cahir's fist destroyed Jesse's claw in an instant. The force of the impact only pushed him back a few steps, while Jesse staggered back at least a dozen yards. Cahir managed to stabilize himself quickly. As energy continued to emanate from his body, his robe billowed wildly behind him, and his hair whipped his face. Golden light gushed from his eyes like a waterfall. His aura was just as domineering as a true golden-winged bird's. Feeling Cahir's domineering breath, the young men and women of the golden-winged bird race looked flabbergasted. "They were right. He's just like us," one young woman said. The previous day, the people who had returned to their home had told them all about the young man with the secret bone and the golden wings. Now they had seen for themselves just how special Cahir was. His aura was exactly the same as theirs. "He's so powerful," said one young man. After Jesse steadied himself, he looked at Cahir again with eyes as blinding as the sun. His gaze was dark and penetrating. Cahir looked at him with contempt. "Is that all you've got? You'll have to use your full strength if you want to beat me." In truth, he was quite looking forward to battling with a true golden-winged bird. As the fourth commander of the golden-winged birds, Jesse had already stepped into the enlightenment level of the Beast Sovereign stage. If he ever left the home of the golden-winged birds, he could make a name for himself in the 9 continents and dominate the beast realm. Despite his strength, however, he had been firmly put in his place by Cahir. Anger and embarrassment boiled up inside him. The golden-winged birds were a proud and noble race that didn't take defeat easily. Jesse braced himself for a fierce battle. "You do have some skills. I underestimated you," he admitted. "However, now I'm going to wipe that smug grin off your face." After taking a deep breath, he calmed his mind. He no longer felt any anger toward Cahir. "Like I said, you aren't my match," Cahir said. Behind his smile, there was a hint of contempt. Jesse made his move. As fast as lightning, he rushed toward Cahir. It was a rare thing to see a golden-winged bird at full speed. Since ancient times, it had been rumored that the ancestors of the golden-winged birds had been able to cover 90,000 miles with a single flap of their wings. In the blink of an eye, Jesse appeared in front of Cahir, bursting with golden light. With a wave of his hand, he released a golden finger imprint that shot toward Cahir's forehead. Quickly, Cahir activated the ripple steps and disappeared into thin air, dodging the finger imprint. A split second later, he reappeared a few yards away from Jesse and released a golden palm imprint at his back. Jesse's eyes lit up with golden light, and he leapt out of the way just in time to avoid Cahir's palm imprint, as though he had eyes in the back of his head. The palm imprint rotated. Cahir clenched his fist and aimed for Jesse's chest. Jesse was prepared for his enemy's attack. His fist, which was enveloped in golden light, collided with the palm imprint. Golden light exploded from the epicenter of the collision, and a vast and surging energy gushed out. As quick as lightning, the two martial artists clashed again, and more golden light erupted in the air, dazzling the onlookers. A terrifying aura exploded out, pushing the two men apart. Undeterred, they collided again. A great battle had erupted in the sky. Thunderous noises resounded across the space as they exchanged blow after blow. Even though they were both enveloped in a golden circle of light, they appeared to be evenly matched. The young men and women of the golden-winged bird race couldn't believe their eyes, shocked that a human had suppressed one of their commanders with the might of the golden-winged bird. They wondered what kind of power he possessed. His strength didn't make any sense to them. "How can a human possess such power to resist the supreme might of the golden-winged birds?" one young woman asked. Cassian and the rest of Cahir's allies were shocked by the halo of golden light surrounding Cahir's body that seemed to contain many different types of supreme energy. At that moment, Cahir appeared to be unstoppable as he continued to suppress Jesse. Serena held Star's hand as they watched the battle in the sky. She looked untroubled and didn't show the slightest hint of concern. The golden light surrounding Jesse flickered as he formed a different hand seal. Suddenly, a golden-winged bird several hundred feet in length appeared in midair. It flew toward Cahir at lightning speed. An army of over 1,000 men would have been knocked to the ground by its enormous energy. The pressure it exerted caused the surrounding space to crack. With his arm outstretched, Cahir yelled, "Domineering fist!" His fist exploded with light like a firework, and his powerful aura erupted. A dragon's roar and an elephant's cry echoed throughout the space. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled in the sky. As the onlookers anxiously watched, Cahir's fist collided with the golden-winged bird. The space around them instantly ruptured. The terrifying energy transformed into waves of runes that swept through the air like a tsunami. The air vibrated violently as the invisible domineering breath and the rune waves surged endlessly. Several huge mountains exploded into smithereens. Trees that reached into the clouds snapped in two, and cracks formed on the ground. The onlookers' eyes were filled with fear. When the dust finally settled, they saw that the area was a complete mess. The two warriors hovered in the air above them. Cahir looked at Jesse. "You still aren't my match. Activate your true form. Let's make this a real test of strength." Although he was confident in his abilities, he didn't underestimate his opponent. An expert at the enlightenment level of the Beast Sovereign stage certainly wasn't easy to deal with. Cahir was relying on the strength of the golden aura to suppress Jesse. He knew that if the fight went on for a long time, the first person to suffer a loss would be Jesse. Cahir hadn't gotten the upper hand when he had activated the domineering fist. Jesse, in his human form, had resisted his attack using his physical body. Several people tore through the sky, seemingly attracted by the shocking battle. "What's going on? Who's fighting?" asked one man. "I think it's the fourth commander," said another. "Yes, it's Jesse. Who's that guy in the purple robe? Why does he have the aura of a golden-winged bird when he's obviously a human?" asked a third. Jesse fixed his gaze on Cahir. Then he closed his eyes, and an icy aura swept across the sky from within his battlesuit. His eyes snapped open. The golden light within them had transformed into two golden-winged birds that looked like they would fly out at any moment. As golden phoenix tattoos erupted from Jesse's body, he started to expand. He had activated his golden-winged bird form. A monstrous energy exploded from his enormous body, and wave after wave of energy storms swept out in all directions. In his true form, Jesse was filled with the might of a supreme being. The golden light radiating from him was as dazzling as the sun. Cahir raised his head. The golden wings at his back expanded by over 100 yards, shining with golden light and emitting sharp energy. They were the actual wings of a golden-winged bird, with layer upon layer of densely packed golden feathers. An invisible domineering aura spread out. After Cahir activated his wings, the young men and women of the golden-winged bird race trembled uncontrollably, and their blood boiled. "They're the true wings of the golden-winged bird," one young man exclaimed. "The guy's human. How can he fuse so easily with the golden wings of the great bird? It's unbelievable," said another. "In front of a true golden-winged bird, you won't be able to withstand a single blow," Jesse shouted. He flew straight toward Cahir, his entire body shining with golden light. His sinister aura made people tremble. "Bird's primordial claw," he yelled. His fierce eyes were fixed on his opponent. As he reached out with his claws, phoenix tattoos exploded out, tearing through the sky toward Cahir. "Bring it on," Cahir said as he furiously flapped his wings that could sweep away everything in their path. "Bird's primordial claw." With his arm outstretched, he bent his fingers to form a claw, releasing a claw imprint. The phoenix tattoo surrounding the claw imprint wreaked havoc throughout the sky like lightning. At the sight of Cahir's oppressive aura, the onlookers gasped with shock. The two claws clashed, one large and the other small. Even though they were different sizes, their auras were equally terrifying and overbearing. A blinding light engulfed the sky, shaking the heavens and earth. "Bird of the heavens!" Jesse screeched. With that said, a mysterious power erupted from his body. Using the strength of his physical body, he wanted to suppress Cahir and crush him to death. "I also know the bird of the heavens technique," Cahir said. He activated the method with a flap of his wings. A powerful energy swept toward Jesse. It was as though an actual golden-winged bird had descended, bearing the tyrannical will of its race. The battle was a showdown between two equally matched experts. Thunderous roars resounded throughout the space as countless runes burst forth, filling the sky with radiant light. Their auras overflowed into the heavens. They spread their wings and tore through the vast sky like they were the only ones in the world. The experts' immense pressure almost knocked the Dream Tiger King Cassian and the Divine Ape King to the ground. "This is so terrifying," Blaze muttered under his breath. The surrounding beasts were helpless against the supreme aura of the golden-winged birds. Even the disciples of the golden-winged bird race turned pale with shock. Feeling Cahir's aura, they felt as though a true golden-winged bird had descended. No one had the power to intervene in the fight, so all they could do was watch. The stalemate lasted for a while. "I've already stepped into the enlightenment level of the Beast Sovereign stage. As you're only at the element level of the Martial Sovereign stage, you don't have the strength to suppress me," Jesse bellowed. "Is that so? I have everything you have, but you don't have anything I have," Cahir shouted. Following that, the space around him shook, and the surrounding energy of heaven and earth started to gather. As he flapped his wings, he instantly rose higher in the sky. Behind him, countless phoenix tattoos began to move. Jesse's eyes widened as though he had sensed something. Suddenly, the five-finger mountain appeared behind Cahir. With each passing second, Cahir's pulse soul grew bigger. The five-finger mountain radiated with golden light, emitting thunderous noises. Dense energy spread out, connecting with the energy of heaven and earth, and a terrifying power spread out. "Suppress!" Cahir boomed. With that, his pulse soul landed on Jesse's back and continued to grow in size. Jesse let out an almighty screech that pierced through the clouds. His might surged as he tried to shake off the five-finger mountain. Cahir's pulse soul, however, continued to evolve and grow without obstruction, until it was thousands of feet in size. Its pressure surged, suppressing Jesse. The eyes of the golden-winged bird disciple suddenly fluctuated with golden light. They shook uncontrollably. "That human has the earth pulse soul," one young woman gasped. "But I didn't think an ordinary earth pulse soul could suppress a golden-winged bird," said another. Cahir appeared atop the five-finger mountain. His golden wings expanded once again. Under the dual suppression of the bird of the heavens attack and his pulse soul, the sky was filled with flickering golden phoenix tattoos that exploded one after another. Fierce winds blew, and thunderclouds gathered in the sky. The sky darkened as though night had descended. It was a terrifying sight to behold. As Cahir's aura engulfed the space, the blood of the young golden-winged birds froze, making it hard for them to breathe. Jesse couldn't resist the double attack, and his aura grew weaker and weaker. Eventually, he tumbled out of the sky and smashed into a mountain peak, pulverizing it to dust. The ground and the surrounding mountains shook as though an earthquake had hit. Cahir's hand seal released a golden light that spread out from Five-Finger Mountain, completely enveloping Jesse. Strands of multicolored light penetrated his body. Jesse spat out large mouthfuls of golden blood. He grew weaker and weaker until finally he could no longer move. The beams of light shining from Cahir's eyes pierced through the sun's rays. He raised his head and roared, "Who here is brave enough to take me on?" His voice rumbled as if it contained a domineering energy. The heavens and earth exploded, emitting mysterious waves of energy. Everyone stared at Cahir, with their mouths agape. The disciples of the golden-winged bird race looked utterly dumbfounded. Cahir was even more brutal than true golden-winged birds. A middle-aged man from the golden-winged bird race suddenly snapped out of his daze and shouted, "Quick, join forces to capture that kid!" On hearing his voice, the young golden-winged birds were jolted to their senses, and their expressions turned serious. Without hesitation, one disciple rushed toward Cahir's pulse soul. The other disciples released waves of powerful energy as they joined forces to capture Cahir. Cassian and the other demon beasts watching from a mountain peak appeared to be unaffected by Cahir's aura. Serena held Star's hand tightly. She bit her bottom lip, and her eyes shone with a brilliant light. Suddenly, a melodious voice rang out, "Stop it, all of you!" Following that, a person flashed across the sky. That tall and graceful beauty who had just arrived was none other than Cressida, the one who had brought Cahir and his allies to the home of the golden-winged birds. She stared in wonder at Cahir's Five-Finger Mountain pulse soul as he subdued one of the golden-winged birds' most powerful members, Jesse, and she felt a twinge of fear run through her. She could tell that it wasn't any ordinary earth pulse soul. It astonished her that he hadn't even needed to use his martial arts vein or the golden-winged bird's beast energy in the struggle. Nearby, a middle-aged man named Ramon spotted Cressida walking over and shouted out angrily, "Cressida, why did you bring that insolent man back with you? Who does he think he is? Have you seen what he's doing?" He then remembered who he was speaking to exactly, and tried to curb his outrage, not wanting to offend his superior. Looking at the scene before her, Cressida could already guess what had happened, as she knew all about Cahir's infamously short temper. She suspected that Jesse and the others had provoked him, not realizing how hot-headed he was, with the strength to back it up. Following her arrival, other surrounding young disciples of the golden-winged bird race proceeded to bow respectfully as she passed them. It was clear that Cressida held an extremely important position among them all. "Greetings, General." She turned to Ramon and replied brusquely, "Ramon, are you questioning my judgment? Do you think that I would have brought him back if I thought that he would cause us any problems?" Her gaze was cold and surly as she continued. "It's my understanding that Jesse came here without my consent, so we'll handle the situation according to our rules." Everyone helping Jesse had heard what Cressida said, and began to worry about what kind of consequences they would face by being involved in the commotion. Like Cahir, Cressida's temper was also infamous. Ramon just gawked for a moment, as if thinking about how to respond, until ultimately saying, "Cressida, he's just a human. Jesse came here to help us retrieve our secret bone from him. Can't you see that he was doing that to help all of us?" "Must I repeat myself? I brought him here with good reason. Do I need to ask for your or Jesse's permission?" Her tone was stern, and her words were cutting. The man didn't dare push his luck any further. "Of course not, General. I didn't mean anything of the kind. I was just worried for all of us golden-winged birds. However, I'm going to have to report what has happened here to the elders." "If you think that's necessary," Cressida replied coolly, and then she brushed past the man and walked toward Cahir. With that, Ramon scampered away quickly. Once Cressida was in hearing range to Cahir, she called out to him, "You must come with me now. The elders want to see you." His five-finger mountain pulsol and his golden wings slowly eased off as he noticed Cressida approaching him. Watching him and Jesse fighting like that disappointed Cressida greatly. As she neared him, she began to scold him for his combative ways. "I didn't bring you here for you to make more enemies, Cahir. Behaving like that isn't going to get you very far. In fact, you're only going to make life much more difficult for yourself." He shrugged. "Things are always difficult for me anyway. I don't go looking for trouble, but it always seems to find me, so what am I supposed to do? Now, do you know if the elders have the answer to my question?" "Not yet. The elders have different opinions, but it isn't looking good for you. I dare say that after hearing about today's incident, you may have even less support. Come with me and I'll tell you about it on the way." She didn't plan to hide anything from him. For 2 days, the elders had been discussing the issue, and they still hadn't managed to come to a decision. They were deeply divided on the matter, and Cressida had a feeling that the outcome wouldn't be what Cahir was hoping for. Eager to know what their verdict was, Cahir joined her at once. "Let's go," he said jovially. "I promise that I'll do my best to help you. I feel responsible. I'm the one who brought you here because I believe in you," she told him in a much softer tone. Cahir didn't appreciate being treated like a charity case, though. "You're not responsible for me. I'm perfectly capable of dealing with whatever comes my way." Cressida was displeased with his reaction. After all she was trying to do to help him, his words seemed uncalled for and ungrateful. "Watch your tone when you're speaking to me. I could easily decide not to help you out at all." He quickly retracted his comment. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to offend you." As if they had made an unspoken truce, they said no more for a while, and walked in silence toward the palace where the elders were waiting for them. As they walked away, Cressida's voice resounded. "Anyone who objects to the presence of our esteemed guests will bear the consequences." The disciples heard her warning loud and clear. Cahir saw Serena on the mountain peak below and sighed. She was watching him too. She scoffed as she saw him trailing behind the beautiful Cressida. Does he have no self-control when it comes to beautiful women? It doesn't seem to matter whether they're humans, demon beasts, or evil spirits. He seems to always be surrounded by them. "What's wrong with you, Mother? You're so testy lately," remarked Star, who held her hand as she toddled beside her. "It's your father. He has no shame." "I think I understand, Mother. Yes, he sure is popular with the ladies, I suppose," said Star, realizing that the Purple Phoenix was experiencing a small bout of jealousy. Serena was always taken aback by Star's astuteness, which often left her speechless. Her envy hadn't gone unnoticed by others, such as Jackie, the Dream Tiger King, and the Yellow Falcon, who tried their best to suppress their amusement at the situation, not daring, of course, to openly ridicule Serena in her moment of vulnerability. Even Cassian, who was usually so stern, was slightly tickled, and had to hold back a grin. The sky was dark and gray, but the tree-covered mountains were dotted with the warm hues of fall. On top of a huge tree, amid the withered yellow leaves, sat an elderly woman who was gazing into the distance. On her face, a trace of a smile could be seen as she softly muttered, "Silly boy, you haven't disgraced the golden-winged bird's bloodline and secret bone." As the sound of her voice faded, she vanished into thin air, and the leaves beneath her drifted toward the ground. On their way to the elders, Cressida and Cahir began to chatter amicably again, and she filled him in on everything that had been going on with the elders. Despite all that Cahir had done to help them, one of the elders had expressed that as a human, Cahir wasn't worthy of association with the golden-winged birds, the golden wings, or obtaining any of their benefits. That particular elder was of the opinion that Cahir's acceptance would tarnish their reputation. Another elder, however, thought that Cahir's help with the dragon should be rewarded. He also believed that the secret bone and the golden wings had been obtained by chance. Cahir hadn't stolen them. That elder in particular admired Cahir's talent, and had heard all about his victory over the powerful dragons he had battled, believing that he would be a valuable addition to the golden-winged birds. They had all gone back and forth for some time on the issue before finally reaching a compromise in the end. They would allow Cahir to be their battle servant. Once Cressida revealed the news to him, Cahir was bitterly disappointed. Cahir and Cressida finally descended in front of a large and imposing palace. The old building stood tall, mottled, and eroded over time, surrounded by a square paved with thick blue stone. She put her hand on his shoulder and said gently, "Don't be nervous. I'm in your corner, and I'll do my best to convince them of your innocence and worth." "Do you think that you could just promise me one thing at least?" asked Cahir. "Anything. Whatever happens to me, can you make sure that the others I brought here with me are able to leave peacefully? This whole mess has nothing to do with them." Cressida was touched by Cahir's selfless request and compassion for his friends. She had expected him to request something for himself, but his concern was only for others. That alone made her more determined to do her best for him. She smiled sweetly at him. "I promise." Cahir smiled back at her. "Thank you." He trusted her deeply. He could sense that making a promise meant something to the woman. He then looked at the entrance of the palace, where there was a frozen space of terrifying power, which he could sense was connected to his golden-winged bird's energy. He knew that there were probably many powerful experts and elders inside. Just how strong are the elders of the golden-winged birds, he wondered. And with that, he moved forward with Cressida behind him. As he entered, there was a long corridor to walk down. Cressida brushed past him and advised, "Stay behind me. Keep your head down and don't cause any trouble. The elders are easily angered, and if that happens, I'm afraid that even I won't be able to protect you." She then waltzed ahead, and he strode after her. At the end of the corridor, they were met with an ancient golden door, which creaked loudly as Cressida pushed it open to reveal a great hall. A formless and vast aura assaulted them both as soon as they stepped inside. Cressida bowed respectfully to those sitting on the two sides of the hall and announced, "Greetings, elders. As you requested, I have brought Cahir to you all." The elders were a mixture of men and women, and all of them were dressed in vibrantly colored robes. They all stared at Cahir curiously as he stood before them, but it was hard to discern which ones were looking upon him favorably and which ones weren't. Under their gazes, which shone with a mysterious golden light, Cahir felt a shiver run up his spine. He could sense that their auras were immeasurably strong, even more so than those of the two martial domination stage experts from the Silk Plant sect. At the head of the palace sat a skinny old man with long red hair, who looked to be in his 70s. Cahir deduced that he was the most high-ranking elder of the golden-winged birds. Seated right next to him was another man, who seemed to be of a similar age. He was wearing a light yellow suit, and on his exposed shoulder and arm, there were markings of golden ancient runes. On the other side of him there was a beautiful woman wearing a long skirt, sitting upright with a graceful air about her. Cahir took a deep breath, and his golden aura stirred slightly as he realized that all those present were at the beast domination stage, and were probably even stronger than Serena and the Silk Plant sect's martial domination stage experts. He suddenly noticed a familiar middle-aged man in the great hall. It was Ramon, whom he had seen not long before. It was clear why he was there. He looked back at Cahir and sneered arrogantly. "Cahir, quickly greet the various elders," instructed Cressida. "There's Balto at the front with the red hair. The man beside him in yellow is Darien. And then that woman there is Calliope, who's the chief protector." Cahir bowed and paid his respects to them. He had actually heard about all of them before. He was aware that Calliope wasn't actually an elder. She was the chief protector of the golden-winged birds, but her power surpassed all of theirs. The three of them were high-ranking individuals, and Cahir observed them in wonder. He felt a particularly dangerous aura from Balto, who was seated in the middle of all of the elders, and Darien's aura was quite potent too. But Calliope was the one who caught Cahir's eye above all others, with her beauty and grace as well as her powerful aura. Cressida didn't introduce any of the others at that moment. "You've certainly ruffled some feathers among the golden-winged birds, boy. Do tell us why exactly you think that we should spare your life," bellowed Darien. "Respectfully, could you please enlighten me as to what you find me guilty of?" replied Cahir. But Ramon's presence there had already given him a clue. He suspected that he had rushed there as soon as he could to report what had happened between him and Jessie. Anger began to bubble inside of him, and he was fully prepared to defend himself at all costs, even against all of those elders. The entire hall was silent after Cahir had spoken. Everyone waited with bated breath to see how the elders would react to Cahir's question. Ramon chimed in before anyone could respond.
Surely you're smart enough to know that attacking one of our members is a serious offense. Do we really need to spell that out for you?
Cahir whipped his head around and spat. So you told on me. You lose a battle and you lose face, and the only thing left is for you to go running to your elders. Ramon's face turned a deep crimson color, and he was lost for words in the face of such humiliation in front of his elders. The elders remained tight-lipped for the moment, observing Cahir and Ramon's interaction. Ramon had indeed rushed to report that Jesse had been suppressed by Cahir, which had truly shocked and appalled them. Jesse was one of the most outstanding existences among the younger generation of the golden-winged bird race. He could easily take down any tiger or dragon who challenged him, and no human stood a chance against him. So the news of his defeat, to a human of all things, was difficult for the elders to swallow. Of course, they had all heard about Cahir and the stories of how he had killed Prince Leroy and defeated Prince Abel and Prince Airy of the dragons, but many of the elders had never really believed all that. However, since he had come to their territory, they had soon changed their minds and were very wary of him. Cressida stepped forward and pleaded, "I'm dealing with the matter. I was the one who brought him here, so I take full responsibility for everything that has happened." She tried to hide her disdain for Ramon, whose actions she found to be cunning and cowardly. Ramon was shocked to hear her defend Cahir like that. He, too, was appalled by her, but although he was at the beast domination stage, he wasn't very advanced, and he was no match for Cressida. Balto finally intervened.
All right, all of you, stop this. We'll take all of this information under advisement, but for now, let's focus on what we all came here to discuss.
Everyone stopped talking and waited to hear the elder's verdict. Cahir looked at Balto. As he sat there, the older man could have easily been mistaken for someone who was lazy and weak, but his frail body gave off an indiscernible sense of enormous pressure, and if provoked, Cahir imagined that he would be capable of shattering the heavens. He could feel Balto's eyes boring into him, but he didn't know how secretly unnerved the elder was by him. Balto finally spoke again.
You seem like a smart guy, Cahir, so I assume that you're aware of the happenings in the golden-winged bird race. I'm going to give you two choices. You may become our eternal battle servant and keep the secret bone and the golden wings, or you must hand everything back over to us immediately.
Everyone stared at them both in anticipation, and the corners of Ramon's mouth curled into a cold smile. You're mistaken, Balto. I don't intend on handing over the secret bone or the golden wings to you. I only came here to give you an explanation. I didn't take anything from you. In fact, I'm just as surprised as you about all of this. Everyone's jaws dropped open. Even Calliope was surprised by Cahir's words. But Balto didn't seem to be the least bit angry.
Choose your words carefully, young man. You're letting your emotions get the better of you.
I won't be bullied by you golden-winged birds, Cahir snapped back.
So it seems like you're choosing option number 2. Now you can hand everything over willingly, or we can take it by force, said Darian.
None of them could believe that Cahir, a human, could be so audacious and disrespectful toward the elders. Cahir stood glaring at them all defiantly.
I dare you to try.
Cressida, meanwhile, was seething. She had urged Cahir to behave himself and hold his tongue to avoid anything like that happening. She shot him a glance and tried to signal for him to back down a little, and then she intervened with the elders.
Darian, fellow elders, I implore you to remember how Cahir helped us to take care of the dragons. If it weren't for him, we'd all be dead now. As for the secret bone and the golden wings, I assure you that he didn't steal them from us. They were obtained by mysterious means, so please put your pride aside and think of our race. If anyone were to find out about any infighting, think about how much face we would lose across the realms.
Many of the elders were moved by Cressida's words. Cahir was too. He knew that she was a woman of her word and respected her greatly for it. They all seemed to deliberate what she had said for a moment, until Calliope eventually spoke up.
Cressida is right. If word of this gets out, our reputation would certainly be tarnished.
Just as she uttered the last word, the great hall began to shake. Everyone turned to look at what was causing the tremor and discovered that it was Darian's doing. He stood up, with a golden light surging out from the palm of his hand. He had activated a phoenix tattoo. Cahir was flabbergasted by the sight. He could feel the terrifying force radiating from Darian's hands, and the pressure from it was like a dormant volcano. It seemed calm, but if it exploded, total destruction would ensue.
Brat, I won't stand for such insolence, he bellowed. Now let's see if you can last 15 minutes against me. In fact, I have a new proposal for you. If you can manage to resist me, you can keep everything without question and walk away scot-free. However, if you're unable to endure my wrath, which is the more likely eventuality, I alone will decide your fate. Let's see if you're all bark and no bite."
Cressida was aghast. She knew that Darien was a frightful being who was almost at the boundless level of the beast domination stage, and she feared for Cahir. She had no choice but to interfere once more.
"What are you doing, Darien? You're supposed to be a dignified elder and set an example. How do you think it makes you look, an esteemed demon beast elder such as yourself attacking a meager human who's only at the element level of the martial sovereign stage? Please stop this right now."
She looked pleadingly at the others, hoping they would do something, but everyone just watched on helplessly. Cressida felt a knot in her stomach. She knew that Cahir was extremely strong and was definitely an abnormal existence among humans, but Darien would undoubtedly crush him in seconds.
"Stay out of this, Cressida. You should know that allowing someone like him to speak to us like that would cause just as much damage to our reputation."
As he spoke, a gold light gushed out of his eyes, and his palm imprint struck toward Cahir. An invisible palm imprint distorted the space of the great hall and enveloped Cahir's body. In that instant, golden light shone brilliantly. Small illusionary golden-winged birds shuttled back and forth in Darien's palm. They looked as though they wanted to spread their wings and soar into the air. A terrifying and overbearing aura emanated from him, causing everyone's blood to curdle. But nobody other than Cahir was affected by the immense pressure he had released. Cahir felt the space around him suddenly solidify, and an incomparably domineering force swept down from all directions, striving to turn him into blood fog. He was left with no choice but to fight back. In a flash, a golden light was released from his body, and a tyrannical energy swept out from him. A phoenix tattoo appeared, and a golden light rushed out from the sky, racing toward Darien's palm imprint. The hall trembled violently, but Darien swiftly deflected the counterattack. The surrounding elders were astonished by Cahir's fearlessness. As he fought back, they could see that he was actually using the breath of the golden-winged bird technique. It was the first time that they had ever seen anything like it. They had heard rumors of his abilities, but they had been skeptical that a human could actually use a martial arts technique from the golden-winged birds. Cressida felt so helpless. Everything had spiraled out of control so quickly, and all she could do was watch on nervously and hope that Cahir would prevail. But she knew that he would need a miracle to do so. Cahir's golden phoenix tattoo surged out to block Darien's force, but in an instant it was abruptly exterminated. He staggered back but regained his composure quickly and advanced forward. He redirected Darien's attack to the ground, causing it to crack and eventually cave in. Nobody could believe what they were seeing. Cahir was so much stronger than anyone had imagined. Any other human would have been crushed upon impact by Darien's strike. As Cahir stepped forward, a glaring gold light rushed out from his back once again. He had activated the golden wings, which immediately expanded and released a golden light that carried the tyrannical will of the golden-winged bird race as it resisted Darien's pressure. "Golden wings!" he yelled as they opened up. The blood drained from the faces of all the elders in the hall. They recognized those mighty golden wings, and from Cahir's aura, they could tell that they were even stronger than theirs. Despite his impressive moves, though, Cahir still struggled against his opponent, and he strained to resist his attack. Under the immense pressure, the phoenix tattoo on the golden wings was slowly being destroyed. Cahir's body trembled, and he felt as though he might explode. The veins in his face bulged out, but he clenched his teeth and resisted. The elders in the hall were stunned. Although they had heard all about Cahir, seeing it with their own eyes was really something else. "He's using the blood of our kin. Those golden wings are rightfully ours, and he's using them against one of our own," cried one of them. "The human is fused with the secret bone and the golden wings, and he's using our techniques. Unbelievable!" exclaimed another. Cahir was still persisting in using all his strength. With the help of the golden wings, he sent a vigorous golden aura out from his body. But his body eventually began to slowly give in, and tiny wounds could be seen forming on his skin. Just then, a faint purple light shot out from his wounds, causing them to heal in mere seconds. "What a strange body!" yelled one 50-year-old elder in surprise. "It isn't strange at all. He has a self-healing ability, and why wouldn't he employ that ability in such a fierce battle?" commented Calliope calmly. But she could see something most unusual in Cahir's eyes as he fought. "Something's not right. He's obviously used our strength training method, which he has mastered so deftly. But there's something else," she added. She suddenly realized what it was and gasped. "He's reached the great bird stage." Calliope's words echoed around the room,
and all of the elders felt a chill rush through them. "The Great Bird Stage," repeated one of them. Several of the elders stood up to take a closer look at Cahir. They noticed the sinister look on his face as the phoenix tattoo flashed. The golden wings were flapping wildly, as if preparing to soar into the sky. There was something disconcertingly unpredictable about them. It was difficult even for those within the golden-winged bird race to reach the Great Bird Stage, as over time, their bloodline had weakened, and their physical form wasn't what it once was. The ancient golden-winged bird had become only a thing of legend. The Great Bird Stage, however, was the closest that one could get to being like the ancient golden-winged bird. It represented not the strength of one's body, but the quality. Just like the strength training method made one's body physically stronger, the refined healing technique cleansed the body of impurities to make it more like that of the ancient golden-winged bird. When the refined healing technique was used successfully, the martial artist could enter the Great Bird Stage. But unlike the strength training method, which was a straightforward and difficult way of training in martial arts, a great deal of talent and luck was involved in reaching the Great Bird Stage. There had long been stories about how when the ancient golden-winged bird had been born, it had already been strong enough to shatter the stars and dominate the sky. And those within the golden-winged bird race had always felt that such tales weren't just groundless rumors. They knew they were descended from a supremely powerful being. Cressida was shocked by the news that Cahir had reached the Great Bird Stage, but it explained his strength. She still feared for him, however, as he battled with Darien. Darien had also heard Calliope shout out the news, and although he too was taken aback by it, he knew that he had to concentrate on suppressing Cahir, and he proceeded to launch another handprint attack. He was aware that if he weren't at such a high level, Cahir would have easily been able to resist his attacks. Meanwhile, Cahir's feet were sinking deeper and deeper into the ground, until his calves were almost halfway in the crevices. His face was panic-stricken, and light golden blood leaked out of the corner of his mouth. Although Cahir wasn't prevailing by any means, it was still miraculous that he hadn't been killed yet. The elders were fascinated by him. "It's a miracle. Humans shouldn't be able to withstand something like this for so long. There's something extraordinary about that boy." "Never mind humans. Even many golden-winged birds would have cracked under Darien's pressure by now. Well, that is aside from Jesse and Cressida, of course." Cahir was fighting with all his might, and he refused to submit or even show that he was in any kind of pain or discomfort. "This kid is extraordinary," yelled one of the elders. "No wonder he was able to defeat Jesse. At first, I didn't think there was any truth to the rumors, but he's clearly a force to be reckoned with," shouted a tall man dressed in long robes. When Ramon had rushed to tell the elders that Jesse had lost to the human Cahir, he had almost been laughed out of the room. Nobody had believed him initially, or some of them believed it was possible only if Cahir had used some kind of special weapon or had external help. However, nobody doubted him any longer. Cahir was still wedged into the ground and bleeding profusely, and the recovery speed of his immortal body wasn't as fast as it should have been, meaning that his wounds were becoming larger and larger, and it was getting more difficult for him to fight back. Fortunately, Darien wasn't quite at the top of the beast domination stage yet, but he still possessed a mysterious power that seemed capable of wreaking a great deal of havoc. Cahir realized that if he wanted to continue fighting, he would need to activate his Thunderbolt bloodline. Otherwise, his body would definitely be crushed. Suddenly, a strange voice sounded from within the hall. "Make way, all of you, make way!" An old woman had appeared out of nowhere and began sweeping the hall with a broom. Everyone turned to look at her, completely confused. The elders all stood up in unison, and then they looked at each other bewilderedly. This was the last thing that they had expected to happen. The elderly woman carried on sweeping the floor as if she were completely unaware that a tense and vicious battle was taking place. She eventually began to sweep closer and closer to the two opponents, and admonished them too for blocking her path. "Out of my way now! Come on, move aside, both of you!" With the vigorous back-and-forth movements of her broom, the woman seemingly brushed Darien's leg by accident, and the handprint that he had formed disappeared instantly. It was as if it had never existed at all. Darien's eyes widened, and he staggered backward. Cahir wiped the blood from his face, withdrew the golden wings, and the violet electric arc that had been forming in his eyes also dissipated. "What are you doing here?" he exclaimed, recognizing the woman he had spoken with earlier. His eyes were filled with befuddlement. The elderly woman tutted and replied, "Silly child, why are you covered in blood? It pains me to see you in such a sorry state." Looking at Cahir's blood-smeared face, the woman's expression darkened. Darien was confused like the others, but frightened of the old woman. Cressida, however, was pleased to see the woman, and broke into a smile. "Oh, I'm fine," said Cahir as he tried to wipe off more blood from his face with his robe. With a respite from Darien's attacks, his cracked flesh began to recover, under the faint rays of lightning. The elderly woman made no effort to hide her anger. "Just look at you. How can you claim to be fine? Who did this to you? Tell me this instant." Darien was listening intently but didn't dare say anything. There was something about the woman that terrified him to his core. "I really don't think you should be here. It's dangerous, you know," advised Cahir. As he looked around and saw the expressions on everyone's faces, he grew even more perplexed. "What do you mean, boy? I can go anywhere I please. Now remember when you told me that you want to take care of me for the rest of my life? Were you being serious?" she asked curtly. Despite his confusion, Cahir felt that he had to play along with whatever the woman was doing. "Of course I was being serious." "All right then. If you're serious, bow down to me," she demanded. He was startled by that request, but seeing the serious look on her face, he quickly scrambled to kneel down, and he kowtowed 3 times to her. He would never have done such a thing for anyone else but his own masters, but he felt a great kinship with this elderly woman, and he knew that there was something special about her. "Good, good, good," she cried out joyfully. She helped him up and embraced him tightly. "From now on, you are my grandchild." "You need to go now, Grandma, okay? I promise I'll come visit you later." She smiled at him warmly. "All right, I'll go now, but I'll hold you to that promise." With that, she grabbed her broom and slowly walked out of the hall, still brushing as she went. "Take care," Cahir yelled after her, slightly amused by the whole situation. Cressida wasn't sure what had just happened, but she had a feeling that it was something good. The elders all remained silent, none of them uttering a word while the woman was shuffling across the room to leave. Once she had gone, they all turned to look at one another and began to discuss what had just happened. Cahir was also thinking about the woman and what had just taken place. He knew that she couldn't have just been a normal elderly woman. Nobody could just walk into the palace of the golden-winged birds like that and not face any kind of resistance or repercussions. And when he had spoken with her earlier, he had assumed she was a battle servant because he hadn't been able to detect her aura. But if that was the case, she wouldn't have been able to withstand the powerful energy of the palace. Clearly, she was much more powerful than Cahir had first thought. As he looked around at the expressions of the elders, he became even more confused and wondered, who exactly is that old woman? Cressida looked at the elders in the hall and asked, "So what should we do with Cahir now?" She wanted to smile, but she stifled it as best she could and added, "Do you still want to dig out the secret bone and seize the golden wings?" The elders were still trying to compose themselves after the strange occurrence, so they all looked to Darien and Balto for an answer. As it happened, they were also at a loss and trying to figure out what to do. The appearance of the elderly woman had shaken them, and they were quite disturbed by her referring to Cahir as her grandson. They had all witnessed him kowtow to her, and had seen her gleeful acceptance of it, so nobody dared do anything that might anger her further. Even the 2 great elders who weren't there at that moment wouldn't have risked harming Cahir by digging out the secret bone. Cahir had soon realized that the old woman had instilled fear into all of those around him. He had seen a distinct change in their attitude since she had appeared. "We should think about this carefully," suggested Calliope. She then turned to Balto and Darien and asked, "What do you 2 think about all of this?" "Yes, let's go somewhere and discuss this in private," proposed Darien, and Balto nodded in agreement. The elderly woman had interfered, and by accepting Cahir as her grandson there and then, she had probably saved his life. Darien recalled what the elderly woman had said to Cahir, and he took it as a stark warning to leave Cahir alone. If he continued to make a move against that brat, he shuddered to think what the woman would do to him. "Cressida, you may take him to the other room, but before we reach an agreement, Cahir mustn't leave the palace, okay?" Calliope ordered, her beautiful eyes sparkling as she spoke. Cressida understood her orders and bowed. She beckoned Cahir over to her, and the 2 of them left the great hall. Seeing Cahir and Cressida turning to leave, Ramon sneered bitterly. He was disappointed not to see Cahir get his just deserts, and it sickened him that that old bat had scared the elders into reconsidering their punishment. The elders in the hall weren't pleased either, but their hands were tied. None of them wanted to take on something or someone that they couldn't handle. Darien was full of questions about the mysterious woman. When did she leave her courtyard? How does she know Cahir, and why did she call him her grandson? But Calliope didn't have any answers for him. I don't know what she was doing here, nor do I know what her business is with Cahir. So how do we deal with him? Asked another elder worriedly. He's a human in possession of one of our secret bones, and the golden wings. If we let him go, people will think we're weak, and who knows what else that could lead to."
It wasn't just about Cahir to many of them. It was about the greater good of the entire golden-winged bird race. They had a prestigious reputation to uphold, and nobody had ever challenged them before. And given the decline in their strength, they couldn't afford for that to change. Everyone across all realms knew that whoever dared lay their hands on anything that belonged to the golden-winged bird race would suffer their strong and merciless ire. And there was Cahir, in possession of their treasures with none of the repercussions. Something like that would cause a huge commotion in the outside world. People might even start to fear the golden-winged birds less, and that was deeply worrying for the elders. If they didn't punish Cahir, they could be potentially putting their entire young generation in danger. But if they did punish him and dug out his secret bone, the elderly woman would unleash something unimaginably horrendous on them all, and that petrified them just as much. It was a complete conundrum. They really didn't know what to do. After a while, Balto broke the silence.
"Let's discuss this matter after the two great elders come out of seclusion, and in about 10 days we'll see the grand competition among the young generation. We must still enjoy such a great occasion, one that only happens once every 300 years, and then we'll decide what to do afterward."
"I concur. Jesse and Ender will surely stand out among the younger generation," remarked another elder. Another one joined in the conversation and said,
"I don't think Jesse will be strong enough to succeed after what happened with Cahir. It's a pity that he was so heavily injured, and I doubt that he'll be able to recover in time. I bet he feels quite sore about missing the chance of a lifetime. Oh well, maybe 300 years from now he'll finally be able to break through to the beast domination stage."
They all felt sorry for Jesse. It really was an opportunity wasted. They all thought back to the last competition, and how quickly time seemed to have passed since then. Calliope chimed in.
"Cressida has missed the chance to compete too. If that fellow was still here, he would have probably been Jesse's greatest opponent. I wonder how far he's progressed in all these years."
The elders all shot each other a knowing glance. They knew exactly who Calliope was talking about, but it was a name that hadn't been spoken for decades. Talon. Ramon winced at the mere thought of Talon.
"I remember how he refused to accept our decision and left. Now it's been almost 100 years since we've seen or heard from him. His talent was remarkable, similar to Jesse and Cressida's, but unfortunately he was just too bullheaded for true greatness. His stubbornness and pride got in his way,"
Darien said softly. The elders all began to talk about Talon in hushed tones.
"It was because of him that the old woman secluded herself away for nearly 100 years,
added another elder gloomily.
"He's been in the outside world for so long, but we haven't heard any news on his whereabouts. Could something have happened to him?"
"That's highly unlikely. Nobody would dare make a move against a golden-winged bird, especially in the outside world."
"They might do it if they thought they had a chance at obtaining his secret bone or golden wings."
Changing the conversation, Balto sighed and muttered,
"Everything seems to be eerily quiet around here recently. It makes me worry that someone might be planning to do something dastardly at the grand competition." "Don't worry, we won't let that happen. The seal is ironclad and heavily reinforced," Ramon assured him.
In a small square by a mountainside, several towering trees were abnormally lush and verdant for late autumn. Star, Jackie, the Dream Tiger King, the Divine Ape King, and the others were all gathered. They seemed on edge about something, looking around warily as if they were waiting for something. Serena sat leaning on a tree trunk. Although relaxed, her incredible beauty was still intimidating, and no one dared approach her.
"Why hasn't Father returned yet? Is he in danger?"
Star asked, a worried look on her face. Serena looked up but didn't reply. Instead, she stared intently into the distance. Cassian and Jackie stared in the same direction.
"It's Cahir. He's returned,"
Cassian said. A moment later, two figures appeared on the horizon. As they approached, everyone stood up to greet them. Cahir's entire body was splattered with blood, and he looked unusually tired.
"Father, what's wrong? Did the golden-winged birds attack you? If they did, I'll make sure they pay for it,"
Star said. Cahir and Cressida both smiled, touched by Star's concern.
"Don't worry, your father is fine,"
Cressida said.
"Are you sure? He doesn't look fine,"
Star replied. "Yes, I'm fine," Cahir interjected. "I've been wounded, but it's nothing serious. I'll be better in no time." Serena, who was the only one who hadn't rushed over to greet Cahir, continued to sit basking in the sun. She acted as if she hadn't even noticed his return.
You should go and rest, Cressida told Cahir. You need some time to yourself to heal your injuries. You should stay here for now. I'll let you know if anything important happens.
She then glanced over at Serena, who pretended not to notice and flew off. Jackie watched her go. When she was completely out of sight, he turned his attention to Cahir.
Are you sure you're not seriously hurt? What happened out there?
He asked. I'm fine. You don't need to worry about me, Cahir assured him. There was a perplexed look on his face as he spoke, however. He couldn't stop thinking about the elderly woman he had met earlier. Who is she? He wondered. And what's her relationship to the golden-winged birds? On his way back, he had asked Cressida about the woman. However, she had avoided replying, which had only increased his curiosity. As he was thinking, the yellow falcon approached him.
Oh, Master, what should we do now? Do we still need to stay here?
He asked.
I'm not sure it's safe to stay in the territory of the golden-winged birds much longer.
Unfortunately, we can't leave yet. I need to stay put for a few days. I'll spend some time alone until my wounds heal. As long as you don't attract attention to yourself or cause any kind of trouble, everything will be fine, Cahir replied. The Dream Tiger King and the Wild Bear King, who had been listening in on the conversation, looked at each other. Who dare cause trouble here among the golden-winged birds? The Dream Tiger King muttered.
Not me, that's for sure,
the Wild Bear King replied. Cahir excused himself and went to talk to Serena. She still hadn't shifted from her position in the sun. You'll help me look after Star, won't you? He asked. I need a few days alone to heal myself. Of course I will. That goes without saying, Serena replied, feigning disinterest. She then adjusted her position against the tree trunk so as to receive more sun. Cahir left for his room. He set up a restrictive seal and then entered into the wild space. He wasn't worried about the golden-winged bird experts finding out about the wild space. Curing his injuries was his priority. He knew that to recover quickly enough, he had no choice but to spend some time in the wild space. Once inside, he was surrounded by an ancient and seemingly endless aura. He sat with his legs crossed on the floor, and a moment later was enveloped by a cool golden light. He had suffered quite a few injuries, including some internal ones. However, he knew that with the help of his immortal body and the refined healing technique, he would be okay. Time passed differently in the wild space, and Cahir breathed deeply to adjust himself to the change of rhythm. Meanwhile, the news of Jesse's tragic defeat at the hands of Cahir had spread like wildfire among the golden-winged birds. All sorts of other rumors moved around as well. Within a short time, many of the golden-winged birds were convinced that Cahir had been born from mixing human and golden-winged bird bloodlines. They were sure that this was the only way to explain why he had a secret bone of their species and was capable of activating a golden-winged bird phantom. When they heard that he had risked his life to save his disciples and that he had defeated Prince Harry using beast energy, they were even more impressed. Despite all the rumors, the news about the mysterious old woman and how Cahir had been adopted as her grandson remained a secret. The elders knew about it, but they kept the information hidden from their disciples. When the commotion died down a bit, everyone returned to their preparations for the approaching grand competition. The competition was a great chance for the younger generation of golden-winged birds to show off their skills, and everyone wanted to be as ready as they possibly could. All their attention was focused on breaking through to a higher level before the competition. They knew that if they could achieve that, they would be guaranteed special attention from the elders and more opportunities to improve their martial arts techniques in the future. Cressida, meanwhile, had other things on her mind. At dusk, she went to speak with her grandmother. The woman was busy sweeping the courtyard located in the middle of a valley. "Grandma, how are you?" she asked respectfully.
What do you want? Why have you come?
The woman responded without replying to Cressida's question. "I came to see you, that's all," Cressida said. She then took the broom from the old woman's hands and led her to a nearby seat.
I know you've come for something. Don't think you can hide from me, the woman said.
As she spoke, she looked at Cressida as if reading her mind. "You're right, I did come for a reason," Cressida said. "I want to ask you something."
What are you waiting for, then? Go ahead and ask,
the woman replied. "Did you go alone and look for that troublemaker Cahir,
Cressida asked. Troublemaker? Don't call him that. He's my grandson, and therefore he's your younger brother, the woman said. I see that you're fixed on the idea of him being your grandson, Cressida responded. He is my grandson, and I won't allow anyone to harass him, the woman insisted. With you as his grandmother, I doubt anyone would dare, Cressida replied. But are you sure that the secret bone he possesses is Talon's? The woman shook her head. No, it isn't. Talon's secret bone was different, which is why Jesse was chosen over him, and why Talon left. Cressida looked at the woman in surprise. This wasn't the answer she had expected. That means that Talon must still be out there somewhere, she said. But where did Cahir get the secret bone from then? Our descendants always return. There's never been one who hasn't. Sometimes you're too simple, the woman responded. Our descendants exist in other places as well. I'm convinced of it. I don't want you to bother me with questions about where Cahir got the secret bone from. He's my grandson now, and that's that. Cressida was silent for a moment. But Grandma, we still don't know where Talon is. Don't you want to keep searching for him? She finally asked. You told me yourself that since he's carrying a devil bone, he won't be able to last long in the outside world. If we don't find him, his time will soon be up. The elderly woman stood up slowly, picked up her broom, and walked toward the center of the courtyard, where she had been before Cressida had turned up. After taking a few steps, she turned and looked at her granddaughter. Let nature take its course, she said. Talon is very stubborn, more than even you and Jesse. If he returns, it will be of his own accord. Okay, Grandma, I understand, Cressida said before standing up to leave. Soon after the news of Cahir's presence in the Kinglands had reached the central region, an even more surprising piece of information arrived. It was reported that a number of evil spirits had entered the region, provoking fear in even the strongest hearts. As a result, the Blue Wolves were able to gain more control in the central region, and they summoned the other powers of the region to the ancient city of Johan to decide who would become the Alliance Master of the evil spirits' resistance in the central region. The Alliance Master would be chosen from the younger generation. Hordes of people poured in from all around the region. Stefan from the Blue Wolves was already there, of course. First to arrive was Dylan from the Ancient Sky Sect, as serious as he always was. He was followed by Jordan from the Immortals, Shiloh from the Serpentine Sect, Hunter from the Hellfire Sect, Ani from the Spirit Sky Valley, Nadir from the Blazing Swords, Jamie from the Celestial Titans, and Sansa from the Talismans. To test whether or not the representatives of each sect had the capacity to lead the evil spirits' resistance, a great battle was organized between them. The inhabitants of the city, along with all those who had come from outside, watched the fight in awe. The battle was even more shocking than the battle for the Divine Cauldron in the Vicious Land had been. Although some parts of the battle went as expected, others came as a total surprise, such as Darvos's defeat of Dylan from the Ancient Sky Sect. Stefan defeated Jordan, and Nadir surprised even the experts with his strength. In the end, Stefan emerged as the winner and was declared the Alliance Master of the evil spirits' resistance in the central region. Many people wondered whether he still would have won if Cahir had been present, though no one dared express their feelings openly. They were also very surprised that Freya from the Ancient Sky Sect and Ariel from the Divine Court had been nowhere to be seen during the battle. In addition, no one from the World Warriors had participated, which everyone found strange. Far away, on top of a towering mountain shrouded in mist, Philip stood staring into the distance. His long black hair was tied up tightly, and his green robe fluttered slightly in the breeze. "Something strange is going on," he said. "The Blue Wolves must have some kind of hidden motive. Why hold such a battle in the name of the evil spirits' resistance? There haven't been any evil spirits in the central region until now. Why would they suddenly attack? And I find it suspicious that the Blue Wolves were able to establish an evil spirit's resistance so quickly." Barney, who stood next to Philip, was also suspicious of the Blue Wolves' intentions. However, he didn't think it was time to take any kind of action. "Let's ignore them for now," he said. "The time will come to deal with them." "Maybe you're right," Philip said. "What about Cahir? Do you have any information about what he's up to?" "That's exactly what I came to talk to you about," Barney replied. I've received news that after leaving the Kinglands, he's turned up in the Beast Realm.
He went to the Beast Realm. Are you sure? That's not good news at all, Philip exclaimed.
Does it worry you?
Barney asked. Yes, it most certainly does, Philip said. When he was in the Heavenly Wastelands, he harmed quite a few demon beasts. Also, the dragons of the grasslands aren't far from the Beast Realm. Then there's the problem of the golden-winged bird race. Cahir possesses the golden wings of the great bird. If the golden-winged birds find out, there might be serious consequences. Barney instantly understood the gravity of the situation.
Even if the warriors of the ancient Sky Sect were sent to the Beast Realm, there isn't much they'd be able to do there, he said.
I know. All we can do now is hope that whatever he went there to do won't affect us, Philip replied. Maybe we're worrying for nothing after all.
Maybe,
Barney agreed.
By the way, when will Freya be back? She's been with her grandmother for quite a long time already.
She's been asked to train in isolation in order to gain more strength and skills. It's the first time I've seen her willing to train so hard, Philip explained. There have been rumors that some kind of calamity is approaching. Maybe that's what motivated her.
Possibly. But it's also likely that her motivation has something to do with Cahir,
Barney said. It could be both things. There's been so much going on recently. I'm starting to wonder if the rumors of an approaching disaster might have something to them, Philip said, sighing. He held his hands tightly together behind his back and stared into the distance. His eyes glazed over in thought, and he fell into silence. Back in the wild space, Cahir was slowly absorbing the golden glow around him into his body. When the last of it was absorbed, there was a flash, followed by a loud boom. His eyes opened suddenly, and shafts of golden light shot out of them. He then opened his mouth, and a cloud of toxins came out, producing a foul smell in the air around him. The toxins, along with the smell, quickly dissipated, and a healthy rosy glow returned to his cheeks. Cahir closed his eyes again and concentrated on increasing the golden aura around him. He then directed his mind toward the eternal spirit power stored in his inner temple. Although it had grown, he was still unsatisfied. I need more strength, he thought, and I need it fast. I have to find a way to get it in as short a time as possible. In the past, he would have been more than satisfied with the amount of strength he had managed to accumulate. However, after experiencing the true power of Prince Harry, Prince Abel, and Jessie, he had realized that he still had a lot of work ahead of him. I need to have a bigger advantage over people like them, he thought. Compared to the pure-blooded descendants of the demon beasts, my skills still aren't good enough. Although he had managed to defeat the dragon princes, he guessed that they weren't the strongest members of their race. He also suspected that there were golden-winged birds, such as Cressida, who were stronger than both the dragon princes and Jessie. Cahir knew that it wouldn't be easy to rise above the element level of the martial sovereign stage. However, he was determined to find a way to do it. Even though he had the mysterious technique, a fusion of two types of celestial lightning, and a powerful spirit root, it had been a long time since he had experienced any significant progress. Breaking through to the enlightenment level of the martial sovereign stage won't be easy, he thought, but I've got to find a way. It's difficult, but not impossible. As he sat thinking, he suddenly remembered the Divine Archive that Hector had left him. The Divine Archive has instructions about how to master the Blood Seal. I'd almost forgotten about it, he thought. If I can manage to master the Blood Seal, I'll be able to use the beast control technique. With that in mind, he opened the Divine Archive and searched for the section on the Blood Seal. He already knew that mastering the Blood Seal was very demanding and required a huge amount of spirit force. It was for that reason he had put off thinking about it. However, it was also extremely useful. It allowed those who had mastered it to control demon beasts totally. In the case that a demon beast tried to resist the Blood Seal, the seal would explode, taking the demon beast with it. Demon beasts under the control of the Blood Seal could continue developing their skills, but they could never use them against their controllers. Since Cahir was basically surrounded by demon beasts, the method was especially attractive to him. However, every time he thought about it, he was deterred by its difficulty. I'll have to use my own blood essence along with some pretty strong spirit elixirs to make the necessary pill, he thought. It wouldn't be easy. Then I'd have to use my spirit force to condense the Blood Seal. The strength of the blood seal would depend entirely on the power of my own spirit force. That shouldn't be a problem, but will I be able to tolerate the extraction of the blood essence from my bone marrow? The more he thought about it, the more he wondered if anyone was capable of tolerating the pain involved in the method. As much as the thought of mastering it attracted him, he just couldn't reconcile himself with having to extract his blood essence using his talisman flame. Maybe it's a trick, he thought. Maybe the method is fake. I'll have to check if the spirit elixirs needed even exist or not. If they do, then it must be real. He took out his cosmic pouch to search for the ingredients listed in the Divine Archive. At first, he thought that he would never find them. However, after about an hour's searching, he finally did. Cahir laid the ingredients needed for the blood seal out in front of him. He had all of them, including spirit grass, spirit liquid, and a blood mushroom. None of them were especially valuable or rare. I may as well get started. There's no point in putting this off any longer, he thought. Although the process involved in mastering the blood seal was off-putting, the benefits that it offered were too good to be refused. Even when Cahir had tried to convince himself that it was too dangerous, he had known in the back of his mind that he would attempt it eventually. He took a deep breath to focus himself, and then began. First, he activated a phoenix tattoo, which flew out of his body and transformed into a talisman cauldron. A roaring fire appeared in the talisman cauldron, causing the temperature to rise sharply. Once the fire was burning brightly enough, he threw in the spirit grass, followed by the other ingredients. The pill itself wasn't difficult to make. It wasn't an especially advanced one, so making it didn't take much concentration or effort. The spirit grass caused the fire in the cauldron to burn very brightly, and soon the temperature was so high that Cahir was dripping with sweat. After a short time, the pill was ready. The next stage was more complicated. He had to retrieve the blood essence from within his bone marrow. If he failed, he would suffer serious injuries that would limit his abilities for the rest of his life. He could even die, burned up by the heat of the flames. He breathed in and out slowly and deeply to prepare himself. When he was ready, his body began to glow with a bright white light. A series of ghostly hand imprints then appeared and pressed themselves against him. There was a flash, followed by a short, sharp boom, which ignited a fire within his body. Faint flames could be seen flickering around his skin. The real fire, however, was inside his own muscles and bones. Cahir trembled and turned pale despite the heat. The pain was more than he had experienced before. Paradoxically, the fact that his skills and strength were already so developed actually made the suffering worse. He felt like each and every one of his internal organs was cooking in molten lava. An ordinary person would never have been able to endure it. However, he was determined to see the process out until the end. Using all the strength he possessed, he finally managed to gain some control over the flow of the flames. He directed the flames through his muscles and bones, refining them in the process. Then, the fire passed through his nerves. The flames were so strong that he suspected they were even hot enough to refine a supreme artifact. Finally, he could bear it no longer, and he let out a loud scream of pain. The scream turned into a wail, which went on for a long time. His skin became dry and crusty, like earth burned under hot sun, and blood flowed from his nose, mouth, and pores. He trembled uncontrollably and feared that he might die. His wails grew louder and more desperate. Luckily, no one outside the wild space could hear him. Otherwise, they might have thought that he had been converted into some kind of demon or ghost. Finally, the blood essence that he needed started to seep from his bones, forming a ball of red liquid inside him. "It's working!" he cried out in joy, forgetting his pain for a moment. He still needed more blood essence, however, which meant tolerating more pain. He refocused and clenched his teeth and fists tightly as he prepared to pass the final stage. The amount of blood essence increased, and its color changed from red to gold. It then condensed and flew out from his mouth into the talisman cauldron in front of him. There was a hissing sound, followed by a lot of steam. The talisman cauldron began to glow with golden light, which grew stronger and stronger. A golden-winged bird phantom appeared above the cauldron. However, it was faint and trembling, just like Cahir himself. Suddenly, There was an explosion of flames in the talisman cauldron, and the temperature increased even more. It was as if the cauldron had transformed into a volcano filled with burning lava. The golden-winged bird shook, and so did Cahir. Then the bird disappeared. Slowly and carefully, Cahir took control of the flames so that he could regulate their temperature and force the spirit liquid and blood essence to congeal and merge. The process required some time. Finally, however, they fused together, causing an extremely pure and subtle energy to radiate from the talisman cauldron. Cahir activated the blood mushroom, and the energy emanating from the talisman cauldron condensed into the shape of a tiny pill. With a wave of his hand, the cauldron disappeared. The air filled with golden light, and the pill, also golden, hovered in the air above him. He stretched out his hand and grabbed the pill. Once he had his palm closed around it, he smiled in relief. "Now that I've got the blood pill, I can start refining the blood seal," he thought. He shook the pill in his hand and then opened his mouth and swallowed it. In less than a second, the blood pill transformed into a strange energy, which spread throughout his entire body before permeating into his inner temple. Although the most painful part of the process had been completed, Cahir remained focused and serious. He knew that the final stages, although not as bad as the extraction of the blood essence, were also crucial. If not completed correctly, all his suffering would be in vain. As his hand seals changed their form in preparation for the next stage, Cahir's eternal spirit power started to flow. He didn't have much difficulty controlling its movement, which he guided so that it intertwined with the energy of the blood pill. He then uttered something undecipherable under his breath and moved the hand seals around again. In an instant, the eternal spirit power and the blood pill merged together inside his inner temple, releasing a blinding electric light as they did so. Flashes of electricity flew out from between his eyes. They combined with a wave of powerful and unusual auras, which all mixed and collided with each other. A phoenix tattoo emerged from Cahir's body, which glowed with light. Simultaneously, hordes of demon beasts roared in the distance. The beasts were of all kinds, including lions, tigers, dragons, and phoenixes. The light coming from Cahir's body grew brighter and brighter, until it was almost blinding. Then, a blood-colored phantom appeared. Its shape was very unusual, like a cross between a dragon and a tiger, and it had a very mystical yet monstrous aura. An explosion of silver light suddenly burst out from inside Cahir's inner temple. The light transformed into a phoenix tattoo, which moved toward the blood-colored phantom. The phantom was destroyed, and a golden-winged bird appeared in its place. Then the golden-winged bird also exploded in a burst of fiery light. Cahir breathed a sigh of relief and withdrew his hand seals. When he had calmed down a bit, he searched his inner temple for the blood seal. When he found it, he immediately became worried. "The Divine Archive says that the blood seal should be dark red," he thought. "Why is the one I made golden-colored instead?" "Don't tell me I failed," Cahir thought, distressed. His tension automatically activated his hand seals and caused the blood seal to condense. The energy of the blood seal flowed through his entire body before finally condensing in his right palm. The sound of a dragon roaring echoed from his palm, followed by that of a lion. A terrifying aura rumbled through the air, followed by flashes of lightning. Then a gold electric arc appeared. At almost exactly the same time, another seal appeared in Cahir's right palm. It was the seal of the golden-winged bird, which strangely carried the mark of the gold electric arc. Cahir's mind filled with questions and doubts. According to the records in the Divine Archive, the blood seal was supposed to have the appearance of a creature that was half tiger and half dragon, just like the phantom that had first appeared above the talisman cauldron. However, the seal that had appeared in his palm was totally different. It had the energy of the blood seal and the power of a supreme saint, as it was supposed to, but it looked nothing like it. After thinking for a while, Cahir finally got an idea. "Maybe the blood seal has a different form because my blood and the blood of the golden-winged bird are identical," he thought. "Maybe my blood essence is also the same as the golden-winged bird's. Then there's the fact of the fusion of the two kinds of celestial lightning with my spirit root. That might also have had an effect on how the blood seal functions. As soon as I get a chance, I'll have to test it and see if it works." He looked at the blood seal in his hand for a few moments longer before putting it away. He was eager to try it out to confirm if it really worked or not. However, he had to wait for the right circumstances. Even if it did work, he had no idea exactly how strong it would be. The Divine Archive said that the strength of the blood seal depended almost entirely on the strength of one's spirit force. Although he had confidence in his own strength, he couldn't judge whether it was enough to make the blood seal work effectively, since the technique was totally new to him. Creating the blood seal had used up a lot of his energy. However, since he was still in the wild space, that wasn't a serious problem. He had as much time as he needed to recover, and the environment was perfect. After taking a few pills and spirit elixirs, he sat down, closed his eyes, and breathed in and out deeply and regularly, over and over again. Slowly, he recovered some of the energy he had lost. Soon, an eerie white light had enveloped his whole body. Meanwhile, a commotion had broken out in the courtyard near the mountains.
"Someone's eaten the sun fruit,"
a man cried out in distress.
"I saw who it was. It was a little girl,"
a second man said.
"All the medicinal plants in the fields have also been taken. What a disaster,"
the first man exclaimed.
"The sun fruit has protected us for over 3,000 years. How is it possible that a little girl just strolled by and ate it?"
"How could you have let this happen, you fools?" a protector said angrily. "Go and find that girl and bring her to me."
"We can't. She's already gone. She's much too fast for us,"
one of the men said. "Of course you can. Do as I say," the protector ordered. "Take more people with you if you need to." The men nodded and went to gather together more people. Everyone then set out to look for the girl who had stolen the sunfruit. One of the men realized that the little girl might be the one who had arrived with the group of humans and demon beasts a few days ago. He went to confront them.
"Where is the girl who stole the sunfruit? I know that she's related to you," he asked angrily.
"I don't know. Go and find her yourself," Serena replied nonchalantly. "If you hadn't all made such a ruckus, she might not have been scared away."
"I'm not a fool. Tell me where she is," the man demanded.
"I already told you that I don't know where she is, and neither does anyone else here. Go and look for her yourself if you want to find her. Just don't forget that I'm a guest here. You should treat me with more respect," Serena said. As she spoke, her purple eyes shone brightly and menacingly, and an invisible aura spread out around her.
"I'll go and find her myself then," the man said.
Although he wasn't about to admit it, Serena's aura had scared him. Once he was gone, the Divine Ape King approached Serena.
"This isn't looking good. The Dragon Empress is causing trouble," he said.
"Don't worry about it. That old golden-winged bird won't do anything to her. Bothering a young girl like her wouldn't be good for his image," Serena said. "As long as Cressida doesn't make a move, there's no reason why we should worry about anyone else from the golden-winged bird race." The Divine Ape King wasn't completely convinced. Neither were the Dream Tiger King and the Wild Bear King. However, none of them dared disagree with Serena. The golden-winged birds, meanwhile, were all occupied looking for Star. Unlike Serena, they had no idea how difficult it would be to find her, or the treatment they would receive if they did. Although she had the appearance of a young girl, her skills and strength were more than any of the golden-winged birds could imagine. Fortunately, Star was smart enough to know her limits and had left without badly injuring anyone, which meant that the elders of the golden-winged birds would feel too ashamed to take any serious action against her, since she was still so young. The younger generation were less hesitant than their elders, however. Since Jesse had been injured by Cahir, he had especially strong feelings about the little girl who accompanied him.
"I can't stand her. She's so obnoxious,"
he commented to one of the golden-winged birds. "I don't know about obnoxious, but she's definitely very strong and very sure of herself," someone else said.
"Where did she come from anyway? It's not normal for a girl her age to be so strong,"
another man chimed in. As everyone discussed Star, Cressida sat alone on a mountaintop, contemplating what had happened. "That girl's a disaster," she thought sullenly. "How did she manage to find the field of medicinal herbs? And why did she have to go and destroy so many of the plants? I bet she did it just to spite us. What's she going to destroy next?" As the golden-winged birds were running around like crazy in search of Star, Cahir, who was still in the wild space, had finally regained his full strength. Since time functioned differently inside there, He wasn't in a rush to leave. I still have plenty of time. I may as well make the most of it, he thought. As he was thinking what to do next, a cosmic pouch appeared in front of him. It was the same one he had gotten from Finian in exchange for releasing Prince Harry. The object it contained was very important to Cahir. It was something that he had desired for a long time, and he had never expected to obtain it so easily. When Cahir opened the pouch, a faint and rather ordinary aura came out of it. Anyone else would have been disappointed, but he knew what the aura meant. He smiled, and his eyes filled with golden light. Meanwhile, in the valley between the mountains, Star sat watching as the mysterious old woman swept the floor.
"I don't know your name, so I'm going to call you Grandma," she said.
It had been a long time since the voice of someone so young had been heard so deep within the valley. The woman put down her broom and looked at Star.
"Okay, you can call me whatever you like," she replied. "What are you doing here alone?" Star asked innocently. "I like this place. I've been here for a long time," the woman replied. "Now it's my turn to ask you some questions. How did you get here? Are you part of the golden-winged bird race?" "No, I'm not a golden-winged bird," Star said, grimacing. "I can't stand the golden-winged birds. They're horrible. They hurt my father. To get revenge, I ate some of their medicinal herbs. Now they're all angry with me, so I ran away. They're all going crazy trying to find me, which is why I came here. It seems like a good place to hide for a while."
She licked her lips, savoring the spicy taste of the herbs that still lingered there.
"Who's your father?" the woman asked. "His name is Cahir, and he's very strong and brave," Star said proudly. "The golden-winged birds can't harm him. One day I'll become a very powerful expert. Then I'll get back at the golden-winged birds for what they did."
She paused for a moment, thinking.
"Grandma, you're not from the golden-winged bird race, are you?" she asked.
The woman shrugged non-committedly.
"Don't worry, I'm not interested in the golden-winged birds," she said. "Cahir is my grandson, and since you're his daughter, it makes you my great-granddaughter. You can stay here with me for as long as you want. The golden-winged birds won't bother you here."
Star's eyes widened in amazement.
"Are you really my father's grandma?" she asked. "Of course. At my age, why would I lie about such a thing?"
the woman replied, smiling benevolently. Aside from looking for Star, the golden-winged birds also had other things on their minds. The youths were especially busy, since the grand competition was coming up soon. It was a very important event that would determine the future of the younger disciples. Even the disappearance of the sunfruit and the other medicinal herbs wasn't enough to distract them from their preparations. As they were busy training, a golden glow began to emanate from the mountain peak. The glow came from an enormous cave near the top of the mountain. It grew stronger and stronger, and then shot upwards into the sky. Over 20 very talented men and women stood outside the cave, as if waiting for someone to arrive. Slowly, the golden light faded, and a figure walked out of the cave. The figure was that of a handsome young man. He was dressed in a yellow robe with gold lining. Although he looked less than 30 years old, he demanded everyone's attention and respect. "We are honored to be in your presence again, Second Commander Merrill," one of the men said humbly. "How has everything been in my absence?" Merrill asked seriously.
"There has been a lot happening," a woman replied, somewhat hesitantly.
"Tell me more," Merrill said.
"The general has allowed a human called Cahir to enter our territory," the woman began. "It's said that he has the blood of the golden-winged birds, and that he knows how to activate our techniques. He came with a little girl, who people say is his daughter. She's caused a lot of problems. Just recently, she ate a lot of our medicinal plants. Then she uprooted the rest of the field. After that, she ran away. Since then, everyone has been doing their best to find her."
When she finished speaking, she looked down at the floor nervously. She knew that Merrill wouldn't be at all happy with the news. Although shocked, Merrill's expression didn't change. It was impossible for the others to tell what he was thinking. "What have the elders said about this?" he asked seriously.
"Strangely, they haven't said much," the woman replied. "It's even rumored that someone from the golden-winged bird race is protecting Cahir."
Merrill was silent for quite a long time. As he stood without speaking, everyone else whispered to each other about whether the rumors could really be true. Finally, Merrill cleared his throat to speak. "Where is Third Commander Ender?" he asked.
It seems he hasn't come yet, the woman replied.
"I understand. You can all leave now. The grand competition is tomorrow, and you need to prepare yourselves," Merrill said. A pool of golden light then formed under his feet. Within an instant, it engulfed his whole body and he disappeared into thin air. The group of men and women started to discuss the upcoming competition.
The higher one's ranking is, the more they can benefit from the competition, someone said.
"I've heard that too, which means that Merrill will benefit a lot. It's rumored that he's already broken through to the beast domination stage," a man said.
He actually has a great bone, a woman chimed in. It's very rare to find someone who has it. In fact, such people only appear every few thousand years.
On another mountain peak, Cressida sat gazing into the distance. She was wearing a tight orange dress that accentuated the curves of her well-formed body. An equally handsome man sat next to her. "I heard that you brought a human back with you and that he has a secret bone of our race. Is it possible that he's related to Talon somehow?" the man asked. Cressida smiled mysteriously.
"No, he has nothing to do with Talon," she said. "Why? Are you afraid that he'll return?"
The young man tried to hide his worry. "I'm not afraid," he replied. "He couldn't defeat me back then, and there's no reason why he'd be able to now, if he ever does return, that is. I'm not worried about that at all. What really worries me is the devil bone. Talon's been away almost 100 years already, which means that time is running out for him. This is about more than just him after all."
"I don't see it that way," Cressida said. "He has the right to choose what he wants to do. It has nothing to do with you. You couldn't break through to the beast domination stage, yet you think you'll be able to defeat him if he comes back."
The man smiled strangely. "Don't you want to compete with me tomorrow? The others might not know what you're up to, but I do," he said. Cressida looked at the man intently.
"The golden-winged bird race is relying on you to lead us in the future. We need you. You have the great bone, so it's your responsibility."
"You know that I'm ready to protect the golden-winged bird race with my life," the man said.
"Good. I trust you. If only Talon was here as well, we wouldn't have to fear the dragons again," Cressida responded.
"Even without him, I'm here to defend the golden-winged birds," the man said. "There is one other thing I wanted to mention. It's that man, Cahir. He shouldn't have the secret bone and golden wings of the great bird."
"Maybe not, but you should know that my grandmother has already accepted him as her grandson," Cressida replied.
"Is that so?" the man said, somewhat taken aback by the news. "But why would she want a human for a grandson?" Cressida didn't reply. Instead, she just gazed into the distance, watching the sun go down and the stars appear on the horizon. The young disciples of the golden-winged bird race were all very excited about the grand competition, which would take place the following day. Even after night fell, they were too worked up to rest. Everyone knew that their futures depended on how they performed in the competition, and that the better they did, the more benefits they would receive. They also knew that the rewards on offer at the competition were only available every few hundred years, and that of all the participants, only 10 would receive them. Even though the chances of being in the top 10, let alone winning, were very slim, everyone was determined to try their best. When the sun rose the following day, the young golden-winged birds were full of anticipation. It was a beautiful day, and the mountains were basked in brilliant sunlight. Everything was perfect, and everyone was impatient to fight.